Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe and Mike,
And I'm Mike Rice.
and we are back to discuss the semi-final of the playoffs because now we have a final set between two teams. For those that didn't see the game or don't know the results, go and check it out before you listen to this episode. But for those that do know, surprise, surprise, it's Cavalry against Forge once again. I'm sure everybody was shocked at that. But there is plenty to discuss in that game between Forge and Ottawa in the semifinal. And to make sure that you have a good full length episode, we're also going to do a little bit of a prediction for the final between Cavalry and Forge. And we're going to end off with our picks for the Canadian Premier League awards. So plenty to discuss, plenty to talk about. But before we dive into all of it, remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on YouTube under the same name to see the visual side of the podcast. So, Forge against Ottawa, Mike. And this was a game that I feel like everyone but Forge fans were kind of cheering for Ottawa. Just because they wanted a little bit of variety in our playoffs. Unfortunately, that did not end up happening, as Forge did come out 1-0 victors over Ottawa, thanks to a second half Malik Oluwabi Beluwu goal off a set piece. But it was a game that almost felt like it was begging for more goals. It definitely should have had more goals. There was plenty of opportunities, plenty of chances, plenty of contentious moments. But I feel like overall, Forge, I'm not going to say Forge aren't worthy winners because they won in the end. And they did enough to squeak that goal through. It wasn't the prettiest. It was quite an ugly win. But he kind of felt that Ottawa deserved more, and they have really no one to blame but themselves. It kind of felt like Forge had to rely a little bit on their luck, had to rely on a couple of big moments from some players, and also had to rely on some really poor finishing from Ottawa. It was just, it wasn't a great showing for Ottawa in terms of scoring goals, which is, to be fair, being the theme of their season pretty much all year. And in the end, it's kind of fitting that that's what cost them a spot in the final.
That's it. A lot of shots from outside the box again. Like there's good number of hits. Like Ditch and Del Campo had chances that weren't far off, but that's just happened so much that they were limited to, like, they get into that habit of just sort of rushing or maybe panicking themselves and thinking, right, I've got to hit it, we've got to take shots, rather than creating the best chances. They did create some though, like you say, like some great saves from Klyla, made some really important saves in that. Like, so some of the luck and some of the luck on Forge's side, and some really like key standout moments, like you say, could have gone other ways in other games possibly. But we've said that about Ottawa a few times this year. But yeah, I mean, players like the week before we were praising Hijab for his sort of awareness defensively in the box, and he pulled it out again with a double line in the same process. Yeah, same time, double save off the line in the same sort of wave of attack. And it's just, those moments where you think, okay, well, they're really switched on, they're dealing with this, plus they're getting the rub of the green with these chances that were going just wide or just over. It's just the end of this season's just not been Atletico Ottawa's, is it?
No, it has not. And I think sometimes I feel like if you lose and you deserve to lose, it stings a little bit less than when you lose and you feel like you deserved to draw, if not win. And I feel like that must be what Ottawa and Ottawa's fans are feeling, because they had so many great chances. The first half, admittedly, wasn't a spectacle. There were a handful of chances. There was that, most of them coming from set pieces, especially for Ottawa in the early stages. There was a chance where I believe it was Didic headed it across going towards the back post, and Koilalat I think it was on Kevin Dos Santos that he kind of like clawed it straight out of the air. Um, that it was a fantastic save from Coyote, which kind of set the
Yeah.
tone for his performance. I think he'll be very happy about his performance because there was a lot of questions asked about him in the goal that he conceded against Cavalry in the sort of the final deciding match, the first round match between Cavalry and Forge, where Wachowski kind of just carved right through the middle and put it past them. Wasn't all his fault, but I'm sure he felt a bit aggrieved by that. He made up for it in this game with plenty of saves. We did also see that, you know, for the I think it was again off a corner. I think it was Didic, or Didic and another player at the back post headed it down, hit off the crossbar, hit off I think a body part, and then went out right at the
Yes.
back post in such
Yeah.
a small amount of space. But honestly, the best chance of the first half went to Forge. Noah Jensen had that brilliant opportunity to score with basically what was an open net. Really good play down the left from Forge. A little chip ball into the box. Kyle Becker, the nerve of him to be able to do that kind of close control little flick. It like that's a
Yeah.
move of somebody that's supposed to be 10 years younger than him, maybe
Exactly.
from the South American region, not you know the Oakville, Ontario Kyle Becker to be pulling off. But fantastic play from him, drives it across, and Noah Jensen gets the ball. Really good diving tackle from Mateo Debrienne, who had a really good game overall as well, not just defensively, but offensively. I think he created the most chances in the match with 3. He had a really good game. Made a crucial save there, but it fell once again to Noah Jensen. I think it was just a little bit out of his reach, so he kind of just swung at it like with a lunge. And unfortunately for him, with the goal at his mercy, just sends it up over the bar. But aside from those chances, we didn't really get all that much in that first half. It was quite
No.
a cagey affair between the two. Again, it's kind of the theme that we're seeing in these kinds of playoffs, where the first half of a match, especially in these knockout games, neither team really wants to mess up. Neither team really wants to sort of take control. I think Forge, had they been in better form, had they been like the Forge that we saw before they clinched the regular season title, I think they would have kind of taken the precedence a little bit more.
Mm.
They would have taken charge of the match a bit more from the first minutes. But because Forge have been in, again, not the best form, that's their 3 matches without a win, 3 matches without scoring a goal as well, which is incredible
Yeah.
considering the
Yeah.
form that they were in before.
Yeah.
It doesn't really surprise me then that the first half went that way. But then the second half, goodness gracious me, what
Mm.
a second half we saw. If you slept through the first, you were wide awake
Yeah.
for the second, because we had, I gotta say, it was probably like 20 shots that we saw between both teams. It was mostly Ottawa in that second half. And like we were mentioning earlier, plenty of opportunities for
Mm.
Atletico Ottawa to have one. Probably the biggest one, obviously, was Aparicio basically hitting the post from the 6-yard box.
Yeah.
But it kind of felt like ever since that Forge scored off of the corner, where Malik Olowabi Belawu kind of rose the highest, really brushed off Del Amo. I think that was really
Yeah.
poor defending from Del Amo. Kind of
I
just
found that.
allowed him.
Yeah, because the commentator mentioned that. I forget who was doing the game on One Soccer, and I was watching about the highlights, and he's lost him. Yeah, completely. It's bad defending, but at the same time, like he's starting near Ingham as well and trying to peel away to make the header, but Ingham gives Del Amo a little nudge as well, so he's already struggling. He then gets a little bit of a push, so he's never going to get he's not going to be able to help out there. I thought it was a weird thing to try and do because he was already falling, he'd already lost Owolabi Bele, whereas it was bad defending, like you say, but just that little extra thing just to make it worse for him.
Yeah, no, it was all around is terrible set piece defending there from Ottawa, but a great goal for Malik Olowabi
Yeah.
Belawu. I think is one that I think will really help him with his confidence. Kind of lost his place in the starting 11 about halfway through the season. Kind of struggled to get back into it. Methuselah sort of replaced him
Yeah.
alongside Ashnoy Jonsson. But we saw him play today in a bit of a different role. He was playing at left back
Yeah.
because of the suspended Daniel Parra. We saw also a day one Forge player that we don't really see get too many runs of games due to kind of consistent niggling injuries,
Mm.
Dominic Samuel had
Yeah.
his first start in a long time alongside Ashnori Johnson and did pretty well, all things considered. But again, it was a kind of a makeshift defense from Forge, but they just about got it across the line again. Some really poor finishing for Ottawa, but really good to see Oloabi Bellewu get that goal, kind of propel him a bit more, maybe try
Yeah.
to fight a little bit more for the starting place in the final, help him his case out to be in that starting spot in the final, because I'm pretty sure that was the last match that Daniel Parra was suspended. So I
I think
think
so. Yeah, I think you're
he'll
right.
be back
Yeah.
for the final. So I'll be interested to see if Bobby immediately goes for Oloabi Bellewu or if he will go
Mm.
back to Daniel Parra. Because let's be honest, as great as Oloabi Bellewu is, I think he's better than center back. Daniel
Yeah.
Parra just brings so much to Forge
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
he's got that
attack.
little extra, hasn't he? I mean,
He loves to bomb up the left side, even kind
yeah,
of cut inside to allow Borges or Betty Banga to go down the left. So yeah, he's a quality player in possession.
yeah, yeah, definitely. If he's fit, you'd start him. He gives that extra like. Oh, Olabi Bale was playing some nice sort of forward passes in there from the left back spot and getting attacks going as well. And he was getting back. It was like sometimes he's struggled getting beat. He got beat by a Parisia at one point and then gets back and makes the tackle and things like that. So you can see he's got some. He's got his defensive qualities. I think. Yeah, I agree. Like get him in the center and yeah, see. I think hopefully we see a lot more of him next year and he can really keep down the place for the full season.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully because he's a player that we rate really highly,
Yeah, I love
especially
him.
with the start that he had to the season. As the player that was replacing the Mandracar James hole that they had. So hopefully he does get to kind of kick on after this. But it did kind of feel like after that, Forge sat back and started to feel that pressure from Ottawa again, kind of unforged like in that sense. Again, I feel like they won the game and fantastic for them, but it still feels like they're not at the level that they were before they clinched the season title. I do think that the momentum that they've been carrying, this sort of negative momentum that they've been carrying, where they just are sort of switched off and not focused, they're not all raring to go. It's been carrying over for some time, and again, it happened in this game. Had Ottawa been even just a little bit better, it probably could have gone to, extra time penalties. It probably might have even gone to Ottawa winning the whole match. So it does make me wonder what Bobby will do in this coming week before the final to really get the guys to be focused again, because Ottawa should have won that game in the second half with the chances they had.
Yeah.
It was a really, really like confident display from Ottawa. You could sense that they could sense that there was blood in the water. But every time that the ball kind of fell to someone who had a perfect opportunity, whether it's Ollie Bassett or Ruben Del Campo or Mateo de Brienne or whoever was at Abubakar Sissoko, like they had players in and around those areas. Every time it kind of fell to them, they kind of snatched at the chances. There was still that
Mm.
lack of composure from Ottawa, and it's something that's been happening. We've talked about it at length, for weeks and weeks and weeks. But it's still, even still, we talk about it and talk about it. But I'm still scratching my head as why does this keep happening with a squad that's as talented as Ottawa's?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been able to, other than saying what you see, like you can only, it comes down to like the mentality, I guess, and the team, like how they're getting prepared week after week for these matches. And there's obviously confidence, like with the way they play and their build-up play, and like throughout that half, like if you didn't know the score and you tuned in part way through, you'd think, well, Ottawa are all over and they must be like like you would probably guess, oh, one of these teams is one up. You'd say it would be Ottawa. They're just going at them. Like Forge can't get out. But yeah, that's just once it gets down to that final touch, they just lose that little bit of composure at times and a bit of bad luck and things like that, like we say. And it's just how this team's unfortunately got in a rhythm, and comes back to training and the coaching, I guess, to get them out of that and to get them firing again. Because at one point they were. It's not like this has happened the entire season. You couldn't stop them scoring at first.
Exactly. It's the sort of thing where did that all that confidence at the beginning of the season, all that kind of just like lethal clinical nature that we saw from them, where they were scoring for fun, all different types of players were scoring. Where did that go?
Mm.
Right. And it's a very, very easy thing. It's sort of a low hanging fruit to immediately point fingers to the coaching. Very common in world football to do that.
Yeah,
But at the same time, you gotta look our Carlos Gonzalez record. He doesn't have a great record when it comes to the end of the season. Once again, kind of struggles at the end of the season this season. Does well against York United. Should have been better. Shouldn't have let it go to the penalties.
no,
Wasn't that and an A1 performance, but they did just enough. And this one, they did an even better performance, but they still weren't able to get the result.
mm.
And you can only say, good job, great performance, unlucky so many times before people are asking serious questions about, well, when can we get, an actual win based off these good
Mm.
performances? And I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Carlos Gonzalez. And yeah, again, we talked about how at the beginning of the season, with the super team that Ottawa built, we're like,
Mm.
they have to win something this season. That was the big pressure on
Yeah,
Carlos Gonzalez, is they had to win something. It doesn't matter if you score 100 goals or if you score 40. You have to just win the games with the
yeah,
talented squad that you have. You don't always have to do it in style. You don't always have to dominate. You can have scrappy wings. You can look at how Calgary won the regular season last season. Not every game, most of the games were kind of these
pretty tight.
scrappy,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty tight, well, like hard fought wins. You don't
Mm.
have to blow teams away to win a title.
Mm.
You just have to be consistent. You got to be clinical. You have to be focused. And it feels like Ottawa had that to start. And then after maybe like match week 10, 12, the wheels started kind of to fall off. And then they got to the point where they didn't even finish second after being clear favorites in first.
Mm.
They finished third. And now they're missing into the final. And so they come away with no trophies. They don't come away with a Champions Cup spot, which was a goal of theirs that they won
Yeah.
at the beginning of the season. Where does this leave Carlos Gonzalez? I think that's the biggest question that most people are going to be asking now is where does this leave Cargo ahead of 2025?
Yeah, I mean, from if memory serves right, he was given a 1 year extension for this year. Um, last after last season, missing out on the playoffs, to then get that big investment into them and to go out and do something, you've got to get something out of it. Like you say, third in the league, not good enough. Like for what they would have aimed at, like what the owners will be planning, and yeah, to not get CONCACAF either is just not. He hasn't met the like. I mean, we're not there, but when a club sets themselves up with this sort of roster, there is an aim, there is a minimum expectation, and this can't be it. Maybe it'd be different if they got into the final, but yeah, not even
Mm.
making the final or the playoffs as well, finishing third in the league. It's just what has the amount of investment that's gone in there and the opportunities. Why is not that different to last year. It's a little bit better. It's a little bit higher up, but the season started the same. Like it started and finished in quite similar fashion, just slightly higher up the league because of the quality that's been invested. So, yeah, like this is another season for Carlos Gonzalez where he's okay, we start quite well, and then as the season goes on, we fade away. And just individual talent has helped him get into the playoffs. Because if a couple of those players weren't there, you take out Aparisi and Didic, for example, are they a playoff team? Like,
Mm.
would they have held on to like some of these draws that they got? Would they have held on to some of these tight wins if they didn't have just those two players? And when you've got such a stacked roster, like they should have been much more confidence in this team. I can't see them coming back to it next year.
Yeah, I think that's like it sucks to say, but like I feel like I agree with you there where I can't really see Ottawa continuing with him. I mean, one of the biggest questions that we'll probably delve into when we do the Ottawa postmortem episode after the season's finished is, the player personnel, who stays, who goes, like how
Yeah.
much overturn. They spend a lot of money this season. Are they going to try a different approach? Are they going to let some of the maybe the high earners that didn't play all that well go? I'll be curious to see what the strategy is going into 2025. But I do feel like, regardless of what direction they go, I kind of feel like they're gonna want a fresh page, like a clean slate, and brings a new coach in, and maybe somebody that has a bit more experience in terms of championships, winning championships. Somebody that understands what it takes to win across an entire season, or at least somebody that maybe has the you know being a tactician is fantastic, but somebody that you also need that side of it, of you need to be like a more charismatic, mentally hardened coach to deal with all the egos and personalities that come with dealing with a super team. That's why when we see, in European leagues, these super teams being built, if they have a weak minded manager, they usually don't do all that well. Not to say Carlos Gonzalez is a weak-minded manager, but I'm feeling
Mm.
like maybe he's not as strong as this crop of players need to kind of keep them in line, to make sure that they're focused, to make sure that they're, you know, ready to compete at week in and week out for all 28 match days. Because it's the little details that really go into it. I feel like when even just like 5% of the level is dropped in training, that 5% could be the difference between you scoring on the weekend or not. And that the difference of you scoring on the weekend or not can determine whether you win the game or not. And whether you win the game or not could be the difference whether you make the playoffs or finish second or finish
Mm.
first. Like everything, all the little details that maybe some people don't think is important matters so much when the league is so tight as it is in the modern day version of the CPL, where I feel like that's one of the things that I love about Bobby and Tommy is that they never relent. They
No.
never relent. They always have their standards. They always have their way of going about things. And if somebody doesn't agree with it, then they're gone.
Yeah.
Right? It's a little bit cutthroat, but that's what they need to be. And the top managers across the world in all of their respective leagues, relatively to Bobby and Tommy, do the same sort of thing. And I
Yeah.
think if Atletico Ottawa want to take that next step to really be one of the big boys alongside the likes of Calvary and alongside the likes of Forge, they might need somebody that is a little bit more like a Bobby and like a Tommy in that aspect, especially with the squad that they have.
Yeah, it's difficult, I think, like, because of the way they're set up, obviously slightly differently with the partner clubs around the world. There's a slight difference, which is going to be hard for them to do that, like to find someone who's going to for like as Forge and Cavalry have that chance to be themselves, and they've built that around Bobby and Tommy, like you say, who do this. But I don't know from the outside looking in, I don't know how much Carlos Gonzalez or whoever would take over from him has to also take into account what could come. Like there's a certain style we want you to play. There's certain players that we're going to bring across that's going to come in, and we'd like you to try and like, for example, Del Amo, like he's brought in and it seems like, yeah, let's get him playing. Moret has been quite good, but they're just players that I don't. Del Amo, I don't know. He's not a standout in this league, but
Hmm.
I think there's part of the way the league they've got these partnerships with Atletico Madrid, obviously, come through, that there needs to be these players come in. So they've got this slightly different way of being set up that I think fans will enjoy, but will also be a little bit jealous of the other teams that can just be themselves. And we'll
Yeah.
see how York get on as they grow.
True, true, true. Yeah, there is that aspect of the pressure of like you gotta get some Spanish players in there because that's the whole
Mm.
point why we invested in building this
Yeah,
team is to help you guys grow with Canadians grow, but also so we can send some of our like C players
yeah,
to go and get some professional experience in a competitive league at their level,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
So a lot of things play into it, obviously, and it doesn't mean for sure that Carlos Gonzalez is on the out. But I do feel like if I was Ottawa, and I think you agree, I think the correct choice would be to look for somebody else. So we'll
Mm.
see what happens in the coming weeks and months to see, how Ottawa sort of recover from this. But at least they can go out knowing that they had a really good performance and they should have won. But I think, yeah, in the end, that'll frustrate people more than make them happy. But now we're going to move on to our predictions for the grand final of the 2024 CPL playoffs. It's going to be in Calgary at Atco Field. Cavalry against Forge. Another repeat. Everyone loves it. No sarcasm there whatsoever. Um, but you know what? At least it's always a good game between Cavalry and Forge.
Mm.
Last season's final was like one of the best, if not the best
Yeah.
final that we've seen. It's always going to be heated. There's always going to be drama. It's not like it's going to be a boring game. Hopefully, knock on wood. But I would have loved to see something a little bit different.
Yeah.
I don't think I can speak for most people in that bar.
Yeah.
Forge and Cavalry fans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Um, But let's look into it because we just talked about Forge, but we also we talked about Calvary before when we talked about the previous match of this one. Calvary beat
Mm.
Forge at Tim Hortons Field. We can I'm pretty sure it's safe to say, Mike, that right now Calvary are in better form than
Yeah.
Forge. They've with Warchowski kind of hitting these heights that he has been in the last few weeks. Calvary have been seemingly an unstoppable force
Mm.
right now. And Forge, like we mentioned just now, don't really look that great. That
Mm.
performance they won, but it wasn't a
Not
stable
vintage, is
Forge
it?
performance. No,
Yeah.
it's not going to hit their top 10 performances of the year charts in that one. But nevertheless, they're still Forge. And we know exactly what Forge can do in the playoffs. And no matter how many times we count them out, no matter how many times we try to maybe pit them as the underdog or pit them as a team that might lose, time and time and time again, they love to laugh in our faces, laugh at our predictions,
Yeah.
and go on and win the whole bloody thing anyways. So you can never, never, never discount Forge. So, I mean, going into it, knowing these two things, the history of Forge, but the current form of Cavalry, who do you think has the edge going into this final?
I do think it's Cavalry, especially when you look at what Forge's away form's been like this year. Um,
Mm,
to get that sort of obviously Forge lost that game at home in the regular season after winning the league. But for Cavalry to go there and get the win in the playoffs, I think was big, like really big, like statement from them. And then now for Forge to have to go away from home, and it's not a great place to go as an away team over Sargo Field, and the atmosphere that's going to be there back in the home side. Some of the results they've had previously over this year and last year, like Cavalry have had some really good performances against them, especially at home. And I'm backing Cavalry as well for the fact that I'd like two teams to win a trophy. I don't want Forge to get the double.
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I feel like, yeah, especially with the home crowd, like Atco
Mm,
Field can be like such a good rocking place. Uh, I think with the fact that they're hosting a final, it's against Forge. Like
yeah,
I know the Foot Soldiers they're probably spending late hours prepping for this to
yeah,
make sure that they make it the most raucous atmosphere that you've heard in CPL history. Because like the history runs deep between these two sides, even if the league's only been around for 6 years.
mm,
But Forge is a weird one because even though yes, everything kind of points towards Cavalry, Forge still always have that element of surprise in them
Yeah.
where they can switch it on and just become the best team in the league.
Mm.
We haven't seen it the last few weeks, and that is a concern. And I do feel like Bobby has tried to get his players to switch
Yeah.
on, and it hasn't worked. But when push comes to shove, when the pressure's at its highest, I kind of feel like that's where Forge performed the best.
Yeah.
It's where they sort of finally kind of let everything go and they just play football and they become the best team, in the CPL. So it'll be very interesting how the game matches up. I do think it'll come down to, and I know this is a genius thing to point out, I think it'll come down to goals,
Yeah.
on who scores. But specifically, I think it'll be on who scores first. And this one, I think that'll be massive because Forge, as we've talked about, they haven't scored in 3 games.
Mm.
And scoring has been a little bit harder to come by for Forge ever since Kwasi Poku left.
Yeah.
Terran Campbell has been dealing with injuries, barely seen him at all.
No.
Jordan Hamilton has had some opportunities, but he's kind of dropped some stinkers.
Mm.
Like, the striker position is a massive question mark for Forge. They've tried different things. They put the last time that they faced Cavalry, they put Nana and Pama up top in
Yeah.
striker, and it just felt like Bobby's trying to navigate that striker position in a different way, whether it's like a false 9 or maybe putting a speedy winger there that can try to stretch the defense. Compare that to Cavalry.
Yeah.
Cavalry have the best 9 in the league.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have the top goal scorer. They have
Exactly.
a Player of the Year nominee that was just announced today. And I feel like that kind of battle of the strikers, whoever Bobby puts a striker and Wachowski, will be a massive one because Wachowski, in the form that he's in, he will be raring to go in
Mm.
that final. I think, depending on how injuries go, if Metusela recovers, if he chooses Malik Oluwabi Belawu instead of Metusela because of the injury or whatever, or Dominic Samuel comes in, I think Wachowski will still back himself to beat
Yeah.
whoever's in front of him just because of the form he's in. And the biggest thing the Forge need to do is make sure that he doesn't get on the ball as much as possible,
Mm.
because he's not just a poacher where we in the box, a fox in the box,
No.
he'll
Yeah.
score. He is really good on the ball. Like,
Yeah.
as tall and as lanky that he is kind of tricksy with the ball, and he can kind of have that really good close control and tight spaces and be able to create space, sometimes carve out space out of seemingly nowhere to get a shot
Yeah.
off.
I
He
see. He
is
was doing that in the last one, just getting the ball and running at them, just
exactly.
saying, "God, try and take it off me." It was like
It's
almost.
it's that confidence that he's in that makes him
Yeah.
such a scary guy to go up against. I mean,
Yeah.
6 foot, I don't know, 6'4", maybe, German,
Yeah.
running straight at you like a freight train. I wouldn't want to face
No.
that. I would never want to face that. So I can only imagine what the center backs feel. But I feel like that'll be a huge point for the game is, how much will Forge allow Warchowski to play.
Mhm.
The unfortunate thing for Forge is they can't even just focus on Warchowski because they also have to deal with Ali Musi
Yeah.
as well. They have 2
Yeah.
players there, and depending on some of the
Yeah.
other
It's
players,
really
Jay
hard,
Herdman has been quite good for them ever since coming in as well on loan from Whitecaps too. So Cavalry have quite a few threats
yeah.
that they can sort of rely on, and Forge's defense have been okay during this sort of poor run,
Yeah.
but
But not dominant in any game.
not dominant exactly. And I
Yeah.
feel like they're going to be really tested. That's for me, I think one of the biggest talking points is yeah, the battle of the number 9s and goal scoring first. But is there any other points that you think for you could see being like the difference between these 2 sides?
Yeah. I guess the other. I mean, it's another pretty standard thing, but that centre midfield, depending on if Carl Becker and Noah Jensen can get something going and scramble the cavalry midfield that are quite strong as well. It's going to be interesting to see how they get on in their plays. Like, we've got like Gutierrez in there, who's like, is he going to be able to deal with them? Charlie Trafford can they get the control in the middle to start with, so that those three forwards can really go and fly at the defense, because Forge are going to have to stop the supply going in, and that's going to probably start in the midfield.
Yeah, very true. I wonder how Cavalry approach it, because I do think if you're going for sort of pound for pound, if you have Becker, Jensen, and Hojabrapur, that's probably the better midfield
Yeah.
than Cavalry. So I wonder if they're going to try maybe their best to sort of bypass, be a little bit more direct, like how we saw in the game where Cavalry won, to try to bypass that midfield, try to be maybe go from directly from defense to the attack, and then catch Forge's defense sort of on the back foot, especially with the pace and the skill that they have out in the wings.
Yeah, exactly.
Ali Musi on the right, you got Fraser Aird. If you can hit him on the overlap, he can swing across and into dangerous areas. I think maybe that's what Cavalry will try to do, because they try to pass it around Forge and try to be that kind of more possession heavy side. I think Forge will be better at that than Cavalry.
It's just trying to not let Becker on the ball too much, not give him enough space, not let Noah Jensen, if you can force him back rather than letting him look for pockets of space in front of the defense. Yeah, if you can push them closer to Hojabrapur, then you're in a good place.
Yeah, exactly. It's just about managing that midfield, and I think that if Cavalry put out their sort of like big hitters, those midfield generals that love to be very physical. You think of your like Charlie Trafford. I think he's a player that will be relishing that kind of game. Even Diego Gutierrez can be quite in it. Those would probably be the ones that I would go for to try to deal with that midfield. Shamin Shom has been great for Cavalry when he's been stepping into midfield, but I feel like he's a player that you kind of put on when you feel like you're the better team, because he's quite good in possession. He loves to kind of go up and down, continue with the play. He can be good defensively. I'm not knocking his defensive work, but I think if you really want to disrupt Forge's midfield, you need those big guys there to just try to bully the likes of Noah Jensen and the likes of Kyle Becker as much as you can, and then try to skip the midfield, go out to the wings, and really pile on the pressure on Forge's defense.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. And you got Jesse Daly as well. There's someone that part of me, I would go with Trafford and Gutierrez, but part of me likes Jesse Daly is that just that player that's just going to run around and just irritate for the first half, and then see what you want to do with Gutierrez or Shom later on. Like, okay, right, we've bothered that midfield. Let's bring on someone with more on the ball quality. But I don't know. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see which sort of partnership he uses there. Because he's got different options. He's got a really nice set of options, haven't they?
Yeah, they do. And I also think, like, just sort of to close out, another thing that might come into play is the bench. Because I feel like if you look at the bench, we just talked about the kind of poor form that Jordan Hamilton and Taron Campbell are in. You look at Forge's bench, they have a lot of young guys on there. They have Kadeem Kame, obviously Cololat's got the starting spot, Kalongo's on the bench. But aside from, Tristan Borges didn't start this game, it was Jensen instead. But aside from either one of Jensen or Borges, they don't really have all that much on the bench for. The strength is in their starting 11, and then maybe one or two players on the bench. But you look at Cavalry, and I'm looking at the lineup from the last game that they played, where Cavalry won, and you have the likes of Eric Kobsa on the bench. You got Charlie Trafford. You got Nicholas Valling. You have Malcolm Shaw, Lowell Wright. Like, these are players that can come on and be a difference. Even Michael Harms, how quick he can be as a fullback. Like, I feel like Cavalry's bench can be more impactful than Forge's. So if the game is cagey, it's 0-0, it's in the 65th minute, Cavalry can throw in some fresh legs and really turn the game on. I don't feel like Forge will have that luxury.
No, possibly not. And they, like you say, they've got different styles of players as well. So Cavalry can make tweaks a little bit easier, possibly.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see how the game pans out, especially in the second half. If it's tied, how the subs come into play. There's going to be a hero coming out of the subs bench at the very end. But yeah, it's going to be a very exciting
Yeah,
Canadian Premier League final. I will be there. I booked my flights and my stay since it's only a 2-hour flight over from
yeah, that's
Vancouver.
not.
So it's very easy for me. I'm very excited. Unfortunately, Mike,
Yeah,
as
not this
much
one.
as we wanted to, as much as we were planning for a coast to
Yeah,
coast live reunion, unfortunately, things just didn't really pan out in the
no,
end. And
furious, but yeah, I'll be enjoying it from enjoying it from home. um,
yeah,
Luckily, it's not a late one.
yeah, no, lucky for you, it's
Mm.
actually at a decent hour, so we'll be definitely texting and stuff. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
will be over there. I will likely be maybe doing some content, maybe some vlogs or something that I'll put on socials. So keep an eye out there because I'm going to be there for the awards. I'm going to be there for the media day and the commissioner final address. Obviously, the final and the fallout from the final. So a lot of things
yeah.
are going to be happening there. So I'll make sure to record as much as I can. I need to pack a portable battery, I think, portable
Yeah,
charger with everything that's going to be going on. But I'm very excited for this, and hopefully it's going to be another Premier League playoff final
yeah.
that will be unforgettable.
Definitely, and anyone who's listening that's going should give you a shout. Get involved.
Yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
it'd be
especially since
nice
I've
to get
never.
some little
Yeah,
bites off a few fans. Get a bit of info on like how it's been, the experience, like anything. Yeah, give Felipe a message.
yeah. Also, you have any recommendations on where to eat, what to do in Calgary? I will very much take them. Never
Yeah,
been, and it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a little chilly, especially towards the weekend. So
yeah,
some warmer activities would be
yeah,
very appreciated. But now let's end off with our own CPL award choices. This is going to be Coast to Coast FC Awards edition, where we talk about all of the awards that were up for grabs. They're going to be obviously announced the final results on Thursday. Once again, I was lucky enough to be included in the voting. So we're going to go through all of them one by one. We'll talk about our choices. We have a couple of similar ones, but also some different ones, which should spark some nice conversation. I think we should just start off right away with the biggest one in
yeah.
terms of the awards in Player of the Year. Player of the Year. Quite a few nominees were involved in this. Obviously, no surprise that there was quite a few Forge players that were involved in this. But we had Kyle Becker, 34 years of age, once again being nominated. Tristan Borges, Alessandro Hojabrapur, Tobias Wachowski, and Brian Wright being nominated for Player of the Year. I'll let you go first, Mike. Who did you choose for your Player of the Year?
Yeah, I'm with Wojciechowski. Forge guys have been really good, obviously, this year. But for me, Wojciechowski's made such a big difference to his side. Like the impact he's brought in to Cavalry is. Maya Bevan was a great finisher. Like he was a good poacher in there. His all round game made it a little bit difficult for Cavalry to really maybe reach their full potential. But since Wojciechowski's come in, he's just made such a massive impact. And to get Golden Boot, take the team into the final, to get a home final, a lot of this is he's taken it on his back and carried them and given them that chance, that focal point. I think his overall impact as well as the quality he's had on the pitch is just too big for me not to go with him.
Very fair. Very fair. I do think that you are correct and that he probably will likely win Player of the Year.
Yeah.
However, that was not my choice. My choice instead was for a Forge player. Shock. And it's not the one that a lot of people might think. It is for Tristan Borges. I chose for Player of the Year, mostly on what he did in the first half of the season.
Mm.
Because I remember in the first 10 to 15 match days, that was like the best that we had ever seen Tristan Borges perform. I know towards the tail end he kind of dropped the level a little bit. He got replaced by Noah Jensen because Noah Jensen um, started to perform a little bit better in him. But overall, I think, especially in the first few weeks to I think almost the halfway point, Borges was seemingly unplayable. He
Mm.
was so solid for Forge. He was scoring goals for fun. He was setting up goals. Every time he got the ball, it was magic. And it was this kind of like final form Tristan Borges. This wasn't the 19-year-old kid that we saw in season one, of fresh onto the scene, full of energy, full of fight, full of passion, gets his move to Belgium. This is a more experienced, a more mature, just this really solid professional Tristan Borges. And maybe it's a little bit of my own sort of nostalgia, my own bias of being able to see Borges grow from year one. But I just think that, yeah, he had such a fantastic year. Had a huge help for Forge winning the regular season title, even if he wasn't, a mainstay at the very end when they got to lift it. He's, I think for me, he's absolutely class. And that's why I went for him as player of the year.
Right, fair enough.
Now let's go to the Young Player of the Year award. That one is being contested between three young professionals, and that is York United's Noah Botner, Pacific's Emil Gazdov, and former Forge FC, current RWD Molenbeek striker, Kwasi Poku, and now capped Canadian men's national team player,
Mm.
Kwasi Poku. All three of them got nominated for this award. I feel like for most people, this is a no-brainer, at least from what I've gotten from the responses. But you actually went for a little bit of a different option. The one that I'm saying that it's a no-brainer, I'll just go first, is
Yeah,
Kwasi Poku, given that he was scoring goals for fun at the
yeah.
beginning of the season. He was up there in the race for top goal scorer up until he left. He went from left back to striker, from not even first choice left back to like one of the best strikers in the league. And he earned his move through that to go to the second tier of Belgium, just like a young Tristan Borges did
Mm.
5 years ago, and playing for Molenbeek. And he's had a good start there. He's already scored a couple goals, and he's even earned himself a call up and an appearance for the Canadian men's national team under Jesse
Mm.
Marsh. So it's a fantastic year for Kwasi Poku. That's why for me it felt like a no-brainer. But you actually went with somebody else in terms of this, not Kwasi Poku. You went for a certain German goalkeeper between the
Yes.
sticks for Pacific FC.
Yeah, I mean, my argument for it, which is probably a thin one, is that Gastos throughout this entire season has been great. Like Kwasi Poku, like he was phenomenal. Obviously hasn't done the entire season, and I think in my mind, if Gazdov doesn't get sent off in the third minute against Cavalry, you look at that entire season and go, well, that's an incredible year. Like it was one mistake with the recency bias of a head. Like, yeah, he's made a bit of a calamitous error at the end of the season, but otherwise he's been almost flawless. The mistakes of last year are gone. He's dealing with it without Didic in front of him anymore, and a rotation of defenders partnering TMG, and a team that's struggled, like the outfield 10 out there haven't performed well, so he's had more and more to do. He's had to step up, be more mature, commanding the goal, making, like, showing why he's a number one in the league. I think his entire year and the maturity he's shown, for me, was just really impressive. So I just wanted to give him a bit of love.
Fair enough. Fair enough. No, yeah, you're completely right. This is not the same Emil Gazdov that was sort of flapping across us
Mm.
that we saw at the beginning of last season. He's really matured. in the Pacific side, and he's proven himself very important
Yeah,
for Pacific. So yeah, I think he very well deserves to be nominated, and if he wins, I think that yeah, it's very merited as well. But I will be surprised if he wins because
yeah,
Kwasi Poku, I think,
yeah,
has it pretty much on lock. And also, shout out to Noah Batna as well because
yeah. It's had a good year again. Yeah,
he's had a really good year. He stepped in even more than he did last season. You know, York had a lot of injuries, especially in that center back position, to the point where we saw Elijah Adekubi have to play there for a little
yeah.
while.
Well, they had
So
3 DMs at centre back, didn't they? One game.
yeah, they did. They did have three DMs at center back one game. But just goes to show, that when you have those opportunities, you can definitely take them. And so I think Noah
Mm,
Batna did really well in the opportunities. And it's not easy to have a good season under one manager and then have a good season immediately under another manager
yeah,
that just came in. So again, credit to him for being able to adapt to Benjamin Mora's new style of play at such a young age. So yeah, again, another worthy nominee. But yeah, I go with Kwasi Poku. You go with Emil Gazdov. Now let's move on to Coach of the Year. I mean, I think all three of these coaches are. I'm pretty sure everyone could have guessed what the coaches of the year were
mm,
before they were even announced. Bobby Smirniotis of Forge, Tommy Wilden Jr. of
and Phil
Cavalry,
DeSantis.
and Phil DeSantis of Valerie. There you go, everybody. Round of applause for Phil DeSantis for making this early. No, Benjamin Mota of York United. The three to get nominated for Coach of the Year. That was a good one. That was a good one. We tried it. Once again, we went for different options here of the winners. Well, I'll let you start because you went with Cavalry's own Tommy Wilden Jr.
Yeah, just um, there. I think they're just all rounds. Like, you'll talk about Bobby. Like, they were incredible at home and struggled a little bit away throughout this season, whereas Tommy William Jr.'s got his team. Yeah, it was another sticky start to the year. Not many defeats, but they just weren't kicking into gear properly. But then from then on, they were dangerous on the road. They were dangerous at home. They've gone in. They've got the home advantage for the playoff final. I just think it's not the flashiest, but the all round best, the best coaching with making these minor additions to the team and giving it that little step up from last year.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what Tommy has been able to do on a consistent basis with
Mm,
Cavalry should definitely be applauded. The fact that this season they had, I think, an even tougher start than they
yeah.
did last season with the amount of draws that they had. They really struggled to get going, but once they get going, like Tommy is like a mechanic that deals with maybe sometimes outdated like cars. But as soon as he gets them ticking, as soon as he gets the right
Mm,
pieces in place, that baby just drives.
yeah.
And I feel like that's what Cavalry is. It's like once they get going, it's very hard for them to stop. You see the form that they're in now, the fact that they're hosting this CPL final, it's
Mm,
so much of that credit is due to Tommy Wilden Jr. and everything that he's been able to do, not only for Cavalry, but also for Canadian soccer, especially in and around Alberta. He's legend of the game there, and he's
yeah.
been for many, many years, even preceding the CPL. So I think if he wins it, it'll be very, very deserved. But for me, I went with what again I think is an obvious choice, but surprisingly is somebody who has yet to win a Coach of the Year award, despite
Yeah.
being nominated every single year
He gets
of
to
the
take home the other
CPL.
trophies, doesn't he?
That must be it. Why they
Yeah.
don't choose for him to get it because he just always gets to bring home other trophies. But
Yeah.
we're talking about Bobby Smirniotis of Forge here. Bobby has been nominated. You can look on the Wikipedia, or you can look through the history books. He's been nominated every single year since 2019. He has yet to win one,
Yeah,
which is
mad.
just striking. And I know he's made jokes about it, and people have made jokes about it that they don't want to see him win because he already like Forge already win too much. But I feel like at this point, enough is enough. You got
Yeah.
Forge to win the regular season title. Forge are in the CPL final again. They might win the bloody thing.
Hmm.
At
Did
some
so
point, you
well.
got to recognize it,
Yeah, did so
recognize him
well
as
in
the
the
best.
Canadian Championship as well.
Canadian Championship, even in CONCACAF Champions Cup, they had a good
Yeah,
showing there as well. Like it was a good year for Forge, and again, it's Bobby at the helm. There's a reason why he was in conversations of maybe taking over the national team job. Before when John Herdman stepped down, and before Jesse Marsh
yeah.
was put into place. There's a lot of conversations around Bobby maybe getting that call. I feel like it's about due time that
Hmm.
this man gets his flowers for
Yeah.
everything that he's been able to contribute, not only to Forge but to the CPL, and similar to Tommy, to everything he's been able to contribute to soccer in Hamilton and in the greater Hamilton area. With Sigma FC predating the CPL, like he's just a fantastic staple of Canadian soccer in that area and now across the country, thanks to
Hmm.
the exploits that he's been able to have with Forge. So yeah, I was just like, again, shout outs to Tommy Olin Jr. We just talked. Shout out to Benjamin Mora, because I mean we've
Yeah.
talked about the impact that he's had at York United, to take that York United that, let's be honest, didn't look anywhere close to being a playoff team,
No.
and being able to, just with a couple of Mexican additions, bring them to uh, the playoff. What's it called, the 4v5 game, not being
Yeah.
in fifth, being in fourth, already outright.
Hmm.
Having the playoffs. You look at the records that they've all broken. I think it was like most goals scored, most clean sheets, most points accrued,
Hmm.
first home playoff game. Like the records that they've shattered under Benjamin Mora.
It's
I'm
really
pretty sure
impressive.
I
Yeah.
got a long list of it sent to me on email. I'll check it out later. But it's crazy. They have a bunch of players nominated for.
Hmm.
You got, like we mentioned, Brian Wright. You have Benjamin Mora. You had Noah Badne.
Yeah.
A lot of players being recognized as well for their exploits. So Benjamin Mora has done a wonderful job
Hmm.
with York United. I'm so excited to see what he does with a full season, where he actually gets to bring in even more players and kind of really build the squad that he wants with his York United team. I think that if things go his way, if recruitment goes well, and everything, he's allowed to be put his vision into place, York United are going to be a serious contender
Hmm.
for 2025. So shout out to him, shout out to
Yeah.
Tommy. But it just like Bobby, like he's just Forge. Like, I hate to say it, they always win. I know it's annoying, but
Yeah.
like at some point you gotta recognize it. So that's why I went for Bobby Smirniotis. I hope that he finally gets his deserved win at some point. It would be hilarious if he doesn't, though, because
Yeah.
it's 6 years running. It's become more than a meme at that point. But we'll see what happens on Thursday. We got a few more to go. We have Golden Glove for best goalie in the
Hmm.
league. We had again quite really good contenders in this one. We obviously had Emil Gazdov. We had Thomas Vincenzini, and we had Vancouver FC's Callum Irving. And this is the first one where we actually agree on
Hmm.
who deserves to win this. And it's somebody that actually didn't get to see the postseason at all. It's
Yeah.
Vancouver FC's Callum Irving. And I think it's safe to say that when you break the records for the most saves in a league season because your defense was just that bad,
Yeah.
yet you still kept your team in a playoff fight until the final day, being the captain and the first ever signing, that's just that's I think deserved of celebration. And I know that for some people it's contentious. I got a little bit of flack on it on Twitter, choosing um Irving over the likes of Gazdov, because if you actually look at the stats in terms of
Hmm.
goals prevented, if you go into stats, I'm a stats nerd myself, so I can't even be angry. I love it when stats get involved. But when you look at the stats, Irving actually had negative goals prevented, meaning he should have saved more than he
Mm.
did. Regardless of that, I think you got to look at you know
Volume.
up not only the volume. I'm sure that
Yeah.
takes comes into place too, but saying you got to look at it sort of holistically.
Mm.
With everything considered, you look at the amount of clutch saves that he made for Vancouver FC. You look at the amount of times where coaches afterwards say, "Yeah, we would have won that game," when they drew or when Vancouver FC rarely won.
Yeah.
They say, "Yeah, we would have done better if the goalkeeper wasn't standing on his head." And it was time and time again that Callum
Yeah.
Irving was just bailing them out time and time again. We talked to on this podcast saying it would have been a different game if they didn't have Callum Irving in that.
Yeah.
It was just, he played every single game of the season, and he had a couple of games where he kind of had a little bit of a dip, but the same can be said for every keeper in the league.
Mm.
But most of the time, he was dropping 8s and 9s out of 10s, even if he maybe should have been saving some shots that turned into goals. I still feel like the fact that he made so many clutch saves, he saved Vancouver FC's vital points so many times, and also the fact that he was such a good leader as well. There was that game. I think it was against, I don't know if it was Ottawa or if it was the game against, I think it was the game against Halifax when they conceded so late that he went to like Alan Enu and he lifted him up, even though they were shattered, just helping him out, just being that leader to
Mm.
pick players up when they're at the lowest. All of that combined, I think, is why I went for Callum Irving, and I'm pretty sure a lot of that contributed for you as well, choosing
Yeah.
Irving as your goalkeeper.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. Like, I think Gazdov has been fantastic as well. So I think he's Young Player of the Year for me. But yeah, it just comes down to like, just imagine how bad Vancouver's season would have been without him. It would have been atrocious.
It would have been really tough, and you know what? You know who would have benefited the most out of that if they didn't have Callum Irving? Valor.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit harsh on Viscosi. He provided a lot of entertainment value. I'm not sure why
If we're
it's not
talking
on.
about goalkeeper entertainer of the year,
Yeah.
Viscosi got it on lock. That brother,
Yeah.
that brother wins it outright. No need for a voting process. Give him the
No.
trophy. But yeah, I think for us, we both voted for Callum Irving. I do think it'll be tough. I do think he deserves to win, but it's very, very tough. I think it's
Yeah.
one of the toughest, I think, awards to decide, because you also have to look at Vincenzini and what he's been able to do for York United as well.
Yeah, he's been a good goal, good
He's
addition.
been a solid goalie. And I think he's been sort of underrated for a lot of the season. When you talk about the top keepers in the league in 2024, a lot of people will talk about like Kalongo, how he started. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Gazdov as well, obviously. Irving. People will always talk about Carducci. You know, even Koilalat has come in strong towards the end. But I feel like the Incensini's name isn't thrown
No.
around a lot. And it's unfortunate because if you actually look again at the stats and the data, he's one of the top keepers in the league. And this, York have been very good under Benjamin Mora, having that defensive presence in front of him so he doesn't have to face so many shots, compared to a Callum Irving. But even when he does face those shots, he does very, very well to contain them. And he's a presence at the back. You can see him always talking and yelling
Mm.
and organizing the back line. Like he's a general in between the sticks as well. So like I feel like he is probably one that has an equal shot as Irving and Gazdov to win it.
Yeah, so it's tight. Yeah.
It is a very, very tight. I think it might probably be the tightest one out of all of them. But we'll see, because there's also two more awards that we have to talk about. The last one that is media voted is Defender of the Year,
Mm-hmm.
which came down to quite a few players that, one or two players that I think most people would have definitely seen go in, the likes of Dan Klump, the likes of Alex Ashinori Johnson. But then we have one of your boys in
Yeah.
there, in Temi Antonoglu, the top assister of the league,
Mm.
the wide playmaker of Valor that was so crucial towards their season. And I feel like maybe a little biased from
Yeah,
you,
a little
maybe a
bit.
little
Yeah.
biased from me because of your bias rubbing off on me.
It's rubbing off. Yeah.
Uh, but we actually went with the sort of the outside pick there,
Mm.
between Dan Klomp, Ashinori Johnny, and Antonoglu. In Temi, we went for the Valor player as defender of the year. And obviously, as a Valor player, I'll let you explain first why you chose him. But I think we have pretty similar arguments why we chose him as a defender of the year.
Yeah, I mean the other two have been fantastic. Clump, I could kind of see winning it. It's a hard one to, really hard one to pick. But the when you saw Valor without Antonoglu, you saw a team that was completely devoid of anything on that side of the pitch. The entire side shut down. Is yeah, defensively he's been strong all year. He's had to deal with a lot. Like it's not like it's not like he was on a team that were controlling games at any moment of the season. So there's always been that back and forth. He's always had to be thinking quickly. He's always got to be recovering quickly. And I think he's done that brilliantly. And there's obviously no chance he's back at this team next year. He's going to go to a bigger side, whether it's to one of the top ones in the CPL or elsewhere. Like there's everyone I can imagine would want him on their team. It's just whether it fits in their roster. And then his attacking qualities on top of that. I know we're doing this for defender. It's a defender's award, but the impact he could make, like going forward as well, like he's left. He was like the mirror of Prime Kunle Dad Luke at times. He was up and down. His quality is even better. But it's just the fact that he would control an entire side of a pitch rather than just his area. Like it wasn't just his zone; it was an entire third of a pitch.
That's very true. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think when you have a player like Temi Antonoglu, he's super, like he's what 22, 23 years old. He's come out of the Toronto FC Academy. He was highly rated. I don't think they wanted to lose him, but he wanted fresher pastures. He wanted an opportunity to actually play pro and have some solid minutes. I think the fact that they got him on loan shows that Toronto FC aren't ready to fully let him go.
No, we'll see how he gets on and see where he can push to.
Yeah, I would be surprised though if they do include him in their starting 11 plans for next season. I mean, there's a lot of question marks around Toronto FC. We don't have enough time in this podcast to discuss them. But I do feel like for Temi Antonoglu, they're going to Toronto they're going to have a tough time kind of pawing off offers for him because of the season that he had at Valor. I feel like it's kind of the risk of, like you said, a good, young, talented player out on loan, and you want him to perform well, but maybe you don't want him to perform too well, because then he comes back and then everyone's calling.
Yeah.
So I think that might be a situation there. But yeah, no, he was just so good, and it's that part for me that made me choose him over the likes of Dan Klomp and the likes of Ashinori Janssen. Both of them are fantastic defenders.
Yeah.
And if we're talking about the category as such in terms of defenders, like being good defenders, probably is going to go to one of those two. But if I'm talking about defenders who had the most impact in their team that you could visibly feel, I think Temi had slightly more than Ashinori Janssen and Dan Klomp. Again, I feel like when Forge don't have Ashinori Janssen and when Cavalry don't have Dan Klomp, they're not the same side. I'm not saying they are. But Temi was so crucial to Valor in the attack and in the defense that it wasn't like, oh, they were a bit worse. They were listless without Temi Antonoglu. Like it was night and day without him there. So that's why for me, I chose Temi Antonoglu, because not only is he a young player doing this, the fact that he got nominated, being a young player, but the fact that he was like arguably Valor's player of the year, goes to show, like he had a massive part to play. And even if they didn't make it to the playoffs, the fact that he helped them get close, I think should be recognized as well. All right, now time to finish off with the award that technically myself and other media and all of us have absolutely no say in, but we're just gonna have fun and guess it,
Yeah.
is the players player of the year. So this one is the one where actually it's all of the players that get to choose who wins this award, and it's a it's a bit of a long one in terms of the players. Uh, I think there's what 3, 6, 9, 10 players that have been
Yeah.
nominated.
We'll just say what we're going
Yeah, it's a lot. There's
Yeah.
4 players from Forge, Betibenga, Becker, Borges, Harjabrapur, 3 players from Cavalry, Klomp, Musi, Warchowski, 1 player from Halifax and Caligari, 1 player from Ottawa and Del Campo, and 1 player from York in Brian Wright. A lot of players to choose from, but if we just pretend that we're the conglomerate of players that are in the CPL, which is hard, but if we just pretend, who do we think the players will choose? And I think I took this as an opportunity to sort of think maybe a little bit more niche, because you kind of feel like, the player isn't always going to be the flashiest
No.
of players, even though Ali Musi did win it last year, and he's very flashy, but it doesn't always have to be that way. You kind of feel like players like game recognizes game. They
Yeah.
understand that there are a couple of players that maybe are not the flashiest, they don't get high numbers, but playing against them, they're a nightmare. They're always so solid, they're ever present, they're reliable. I feel like player of the year kind of helps out to single out those players that maybe don't get the plaudits from the media and the fans because they're not as flashy as other players. So given all this, I think that they're gonna go for Tobias Warchowski. No, kidding. And even though that was my first pick, no. I think we have aligned in this one as well to finish off. I think they're gonna go for Alessandro Harjabrapur
Mm.
in this one, because he is being a rock for Forge. He has had, to be fair, his flashy moments in the last couple of
Yeah.
games with the goal line saves. He's been able to make the highlight reel. But before then, he barely made it at all. But it's just as that holding six, he was so solid, both in and out of possession. He fully kind of fits that. The only player that I can think about it is like that, like kind of like Michael Carrick role,
Mm.
almost. Where like I remember somebody said it's like if you look at the game, you'll never see Carrick, but if you look at Carrick, you see the whole game.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the Herjob rapport shout. I feel like he's just like as a six. Also, I'm biased. I'm a number six as well. I love number sixes and number eights, but as a six, oh, he was so beautiful to watch. I mean, Caligari is very similar, but I feel like Herjob rapport just been way more consistent. Even if I think Caligari is a bit more talented, Herjob rapport just been so consistent for Forge this year. Just he's one of the first names on the team sheet
Yeah.
in that holding role, and yeah, I think the players will recognize how huge he's been for Forge this season.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on these qualities. My reasoning for it is much more simple. I tried to put my mind in the head of a professional footballer and imagined that they are quite influenced by the Ballon d'Or, and Rodri won it. So I think they're going to be everyone's appreciating
Ah,
like that position more, and they're going to go with that.
I see, I see, I see, I see.
So I'm just trying to
Okay,
get it right. It's not.
fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. A little out of left
But
field
I do
logic, but I
agree with
but I
what you
get
were
it.
saying about Jabba. It's not me. Just I don't. It's not that I disagree. I don't think he's a good player. I think he's fantastic, and he would be a worthy winner. But yeah, that was how I came to my conclusion.
Hey, fair enough. I can't judge. It's there is some rationale in there, I believe.
Yeah.
You might have to stretch for it a little bit, but it's there. It's there. Um,
Little insight into how my brain works, I
yeah, yeah. If you ever wonder why, how and why he thinks, there you go. There's a little hint.
guess.
But that's all of the awards. That concludes the Coast to Coast Awards ceremony for the tail end of this episode. And before we wrap up, I just want to give a little call out as well. We put it on socials earlier this week, but we are starting to plan our 2024 CPL e-zine. e-zine, whatever you want to call it. And we are looking for contributors, whether you are a graphic designer, whether you are a writer who wants to write about a team or a player or a coach or a game or something about the season, or even if you're a photographer that wants to showcase some of the photos that you have, whatever the case may be. If you want to just help out by helping out, feel free to let us know. You can message us on all of our socials, whether personal or the Coast to Coast socials, because we want to make it bigger and better than we did last season. Last season was, I'm pretty sure we can say, it was a resounding success in the attention that it got, but we want to make it even better this season. We want to get even more people from the community involved, whether it's fans or journalists or pundits or whoever. We want to make it the best CPL magazine, zine, whatever content, fan-made content out there. So if you're interested, please get in touch with us. We'd love to have all your help. But that is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, make sure to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC so you can give us your thoughts. Who do you think is going to win in the final? Cavalry, Forge, do you not care because it's the same old final yet again? Let us know in the comments and on socials. But until next time, my name is Felipe Joe.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing out.